We are here today for winning as a landlord with subsidized housing. Welcome to Real Estate Investing Made Simple. I'm LeAnn Riley. I'm a national coach for real estate investors, and I help ambitious people build a step-by-step roadmap to a six-figure income. How? By creating a real estate portfolio of winning cash flow properties with my proven profit formula coaching program. I built a $14 million portfolio of residential, multifamily, condo development, commercial, and vacation properties. And I lead the Encore investment team of realtors in the Twin Cities, Minnesota. Be sure and check out my YouTube channel. It's called LeAnn Riley Real Estate, and subscribe. Today's topic is how landlords win with subsidized housing. And this one's dear to me because this is how I built my portfolio. There's a couple of things we're going to share today, the secrets to higher rents and how your numbers make the difference. So we have here our guest, Russell Mosley, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute, but hi there, Russ.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, first, I just want to tell anybody who's not sure, what is subsidized housing? It's housing that receives a form of financial assistance from the government through the use of operating subsidies, tax credits, or rent payments in order to make the rent affordable to low to moderate income renters. That's what it is. So now I'll introduce here Russ Mosley. And he ditched his 9-to-5 job and jumped into real estate investing in 2020. And he did that by joining my coaching program. But his 25 years as a bank trust department manager, they provided all the skills he needed to grow a portfolio, even during COVID. And I have Russ as my guest today because he does specialize in subsidized housing. And I wanted to talk to a landlord looking from our side, the investor side, of what that looks like. He manages, right now, Russ has holdings including single family, townhouses, multifamily, and a mobile home park. And he manages his own portfolio. And he has, like I said, a lot of subsidized housing properties. He also does fix and flips. He's a busy guy, right?
Very busy.
He is. Russ is a fast-moving real estate investor, and he knows how to solve problems. And he has a family-owned company called Positive Share. And it's a company with heart and a dare to care philosophy. So Russ, glad you could join us today.
Well, thank you.
And tell us, Russ, what gets you so excited about real estate investing?
Well, I look at my real estate investing as an extension of everything I invested in my career. I've always been a very people-oriented person. So I enjoy the fact that I can interact with my tenants. I enjoy creating an environment that my tenants can live in and feel as though they're in a safe, clean, and happy environment for themselves and their families. Very similar to how I was always kind of like a servant leader in my corporate career. And real estate gives me the opportunity to now do it for myself and not for anybody else.
It sure does, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay, just I want to go over a logistic. If you have questions, folks, there is a chat box here and you can put your question in there. I am going to ask Russ a lot of questions though, so I might be able to cover it. We'll see. So first off, Russ, I wanted to talk about what are some of the benefits to the landlords, and maybe you can rattle off what's the benefit to using and doing subsidized housing?
Well, most landlords or property owners look at it in terms of immediately as I get immediate cash checks coming in every month. I don't have to worry about the collection of my rent. But I look at it as there's also that's one of the things, but the other aspect of it is that I get to interact and provide housing for people that have a very strong need in a way that Some others might have turned them away, but I'm more welcoming in being able to work with them. I mean, every time I take a new tenant in that's coming through one of the subsidy programs, the situation is different. Right. And I don't see it any different than it was when I was hiring people in my 25 plus years in corporate. Everybody had a different life experience, different life challenges. And I think by me having that attitude, the subsidy programs have grown to appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, they do. I think you nailed the number one thing is you get timely guaranteed rent payments. They come on what, the 5th of the month every month?
Yeah, some come immediately by the 2nd. It depends on how each program has it set up, but by the 5th, everyone is paid in full.
Right. And what I want to mention is during COVID, when a lot of landlords had trouble getting their rent, those of you in subsidy programs, it always came.
Yeah. And the other thing, LeAnn, is that for some of the folks that are in some of these subsidy programs, they may pay, so let's say it's $900 a month, and they may have to pay $50, and then the subsidy program pays $850. And spending the time to build a relationship with the subsidy programs, I get their assistance and the accountability if my 50 is not paid. Right? I can call them and talk to them, and it's not in a way to try to get the tenant in trouble, but I'm calling to let them know this tenant may be having a problem and they're not paying their rent. They'll follow up with the tenant and say, we've been told that you're not paying your rent this month, or a couple of months have gone by. I don't typically chase after it immediately, but I'll do it if they're, 15 days behind or a month behind and they haven't paid it yet. Then I'll call them first, and then I'll reach out to the subsidy program to get some assistance. And usually once I've called the subsidy program, it gets paid pretty quickly, or they'll get assistance from the subsidy program to make the payment, to catch up on it.
You know what? I built that $14 million portfolio in the inner city, and I did Section 8 was my game. Yeah. And I loved it. And that is the number one thing I loved. Hey, we all have trouble, every family, and I don't care what neighborhood you live in, something's going to happen sometime. And what I loved is, and a lot of people did have trouble, as I did, but I had a program to go to or someone to call who could help. If the family's son got in a bunch of drug trouble, the subsidy program really had resources for the people. And I loved that. If you didn't have a subsidy program, you as a landlord, you really don't have any help for that particular family. So I loved that bridge to be able to help people and to have the resources too.
Yeah, and when you're calling the subsidy programs, if you're calling with an attitude of solution rather than attitude of complaint, you actually get a lot more help. And they'll start directing you to the programs. They'll call the person, find out what's going on. They'll call you back, tell you this is what we're working on. You realize they might have lost their job, because sometimes people become very quiet because they don't want to say to you, I lost my job, and that's why I haven't made the payment. They want to try it. They have just as much pride as the rest of us do. They don't want to. So once they see that it's not detrimental and the subsidy program can help them, or they'll figure out some type of strategy with me to make it flow through, they feel a lot more supportive. And at the same time, the next time they run into a challenge, they're more willing to call and talk to me directly, because they see that I didn't come after them in the way that they've experienced in the past.
I love that. And, statistically, I looked this up, rental assistance is scarce. It's not easy to get. And people who do have a voucher, they may have waited years to get that assistance. And voucher holders are motivated to care for their apartments and to follow the lease terms, because they don't want to risk losing that assistance in their home. Yeah. So they're amenable to work with us, landlords.
Yep. And communication is key.
I mean,
really key. I mean, when I communicate with my tenants about like rent challenges that they have, if they haven't, so let's say they haven't paid their small portion, whether it's $50, whether it's $21 or whatever it is. When I contact them, I'll say, so-and-so, I noticed that we have not made our payments yet this month. Is there something that we can do to try to help the situation that you're having? And then they'll respond back immediately. No, I'm sorry. I missed it or whatever it was. But my approach to it is not a point the finger or to become threatening, because in their mind, it's like, why is he calling me over $21? You know, they're paying this amount, and it's normal for folks to feel that way, right? So I just approach it differently, and then they look at it as, oh, you know what, I get it. Russ, I forgot, I'll make the payment, I'll do it, because it was an awareness call, but it wasn't an alarming call.
Yes, that's so
and that's the difference.
Yeah. One other thing I read about subsidized housing, you know, it's advertised as free inspections from trained professionals, but from the landlord's perspective, yes, each unit has to be inspected if you accept someone from a government subsidized program. Tell us what you've experienced with those type of inspections.
So the inspections are really nothing that would not be expected by any type of guidelines for a place to live, right? If you were doing a rehab on a property, you had to have it inspected by the county. They're going to say electrical outlets needs to work and be secure. Lighting needs to be functioning in the property. Water and drains need water to go down without it stopping up the sink. They may say you can't have mold on the wall. That's common. That's to be expected. You shouldn't have mold on your wall for someone living in your property. Now, recently I actually just met with the subsidy program the day before yesterday. No, it was yesterday, where I called them ahead of time because I wanted to get in front of it because I knew it was going to be an issue. Was that they wanted me, I knew they were going to want me to have a ceiling fan. Have a ventilation fan in the bathroom. But this is a basement unit that the previous owner did not put a fan in the bathroom. I know immediately for code, doesn't matter whether it's for a subsidy program or if I was getting a rehab inspected, they're going to want to see that there's a vent or there's a window. It's a basement unit, so there's no window. So I reached out to the subsidy program, told them that, I know this tenant is looking to move in immediately. I don't have time to put the fan in. I expect for everything else to pass, like fire, having smoke detectors and those things. And what he told me was that, I understand that, Russ, I appreciate that. Why don't you just tell me when you think you'll have it done and give me a letter telling me that you'll have it done by that time from your contractor? And I told him it'll be at least a month after the tenants moved in before it's finished. He says, I'm okay with that. I have something in writing I can put into the file. I will approve for her to move into the unit. And that was the communication was key. It wasn't like I was trying to hide anything. I'll have it done within the month that it needs to be. And the tenant will be moved in next week.
That is great. And it's all because you knew that if the inspector came, he would want a fan in that basement.
Yeah, he's going to want a fan in there. I knew that the electrical outlets have to be working. The light switches have to function. There can't be any mold. There has to be smoke detectors. There had to be CO2. But you would put that in any unit anyway. If you're not putting those in those units, you're creating problems for yourself.
I think that's maybe there's thoughts out there, I don't know where they came from, that it's difficult to do Section 8 rentals, that there's problems. It's really not true. That's why I wanted to do this meeting today, because in all my years of doing Section 8 housing, I thought it was a great program, great help, everything, it was good for landlords. And no, they weren't picking apart our properties. The city was picking them apart worse than the Section 8 inspectors.
Yeah, and the city inspectors that would come through, they're kind of looking for the same safety issues, the safety
Yes.
thing, right? If you don't have a window in your basement that someone can crawl out securely, like an egress window, then it's not safe. It's simply not safe. I mean,
Right.
we wouldn't want to live in those conditions where we can't get out and there's only 1 inch out of the door. And if there's a fire, you're going to be in even more trouble. So
That's
they may
why,
come in and say, you either put one in, yeah, it's going to cost you $1,000, but
put
it's
it in.
safe.
If you're going to rent it as a
You're
bedroom,
going to
you
rent
have,
it, yeah, put it in.
yeah. Just for anybody on here, how you find these subsidized programs is you go to the county that your piece of property is in. And you
Yep.
can probably just Google subsidized housing or affordable housing in X county. It's that simple. No matter where you are in the entire US, it's available. So
Yep.
I just wanted you to know that. And I thought this was really a great statistic. So I live in Hennepin County, and Russ owns some property in Hennepin County. So I looked up Hennepin County right away. I just went there to their website, and it's called, the place you go is called Housing Link in Hennepin County. But I thought this was really a great stat. It said that you should put your ad on there if you have a rental. And the reasoning they said is, compare that ad, which is free incidentally, to the 35,000 plus people searching for housing on that app every month. 35,000 people looking for a place to rent.
Mhm.
That's pretty good exposure, folks. I was surprised. So yes, that's also, they are the source for where the people who do have the vouchers or subsidy go to look for the apartments. So I wanted to show you, I'm going to share screen with you just for an example, because this is what you're going to see probably when you do look at your county, wherever your property is. This is, again, Hennepin County, and this is a chart on Housing Link's market rent data. And this is one of the reasons why I really, Section 8 rental, right here we are, March, this is March 2 months ago. The average rent on a 3-bedroom, or the amount that they will pay, is $1,795. $1,425 on a 2-bedroom and $1,100 on a 1-bedroom. And then down here, this is interesting. This is the 2.5 times the income. This is the income, you know, that the landlords, that's a typical number. Landlords say we need 2.5 times the income to be able to qualify for this apartment. And here's the income numbers right here. On that 3-bedroom, you got to be making $4,488 in that family, or $35 or $2,750. That's your stats right now. And I got one more chart here. Then let's say, okay, I'm in Hennepin County. I want to do this. This is the next chart. And this is kind of complicated, folks. And what it says is the payment standard for that county, we're going to take a 3-bedroom, is $1,835. But then you have a formula, and that's what this stuff out here is. This 3-bedroom, has the utilities. Remember, if you, let's say you have a duplex or a 4-plex, sometimes the landlord is paying the heat, sometimes the tenant is paying the heat. So you have to go down this chart. DT is a duplex or a townhouse. A is an apartment, S single family house. You got to go down there. And if, let's say the tenant has to pay the gas heat, see that $88, you would have to take that $88 off of this $1,835. And you go down this formula and you figure it out, who's paying for the trash, the water, all that. That's how you come up with the real number that you can charge. I just wanted to show you that it's not just the that one number. There's a formula. Every one of these counties are going to have some sort of a formula. So it's just an awareness issue. Go look it up on their website. So, and yes, that tenant needs to meet whatever your landlord criteria is that you would use for anybody else, 2.5 times their income or whatever it is, your standard. Ellen's asking if there'll be a replay. Yes, there will be. So you can, if you have to go, you can listen to this. So, okay, Russ, now I know that you do buy and hold and flips. How many
Yes,
units do you have now?
35.
35. Woohoo!
Yeah,
So I'm curious, you have a lot of tenants then through these government programs, right?
yep.
And
Yep.
tell us what works for you about this.
I this process fits me as a person and me as in my business model. I chose the name Positive Share intentionally, right? So my goal in my business is to create an environment where people can have a clean, safe place for people to live. And a lot of the subsidy programs have a need for people that have an appreciation for having some place that's safe and clean for them and their families to live, even if they're having financial conditions. So I don't differ as to whether I rent to a Section 8 or whether I rent to another subsidy program or whether I rent to someone that's making $100,000 a year. They all go through the same process. They all go through credit and background checks. I meet all of them face to face before I decide to rent to them. They all go through the same questions, same interview process, right? And then I treat every last one of them the same. I trust my gut and I trust the data.
I want to just pause a second because this is critical. We are on the line of a fair housing issue. In housing, you need to treat all people equally. And as a landlord, I love what Russ just said. I teach people this stuff. That's why I really caught this pointer. You do need to have the same set of questions, the same. Everyone is treated equally. That is fair housing, and you're being a very responsible landlord following the law.
Yep. And the subsidy programs appreciate the fact that I'm not looking at the people that are coming through those programs any different.
Yep.
Right. I realize the fact that if I do take someone from a subsidy program, it's guaranteed money, but you can take someone in that has making $100,000 a year, and they could be more of a problem. I've learned they could be more in the problem than the Section 8 or the people that come to the subsidy programs issues. And I have no recourse except to deal with them directly and interact with them and hope that they're going to have a great attitude about it. Right. So I think by everyone realizing that they're all treated the same, whether the Section 8 person calls me and says there's a problem or whether someone else calls me, I still treat them the same way.
That's great. So was it hard to get started as a landlord? Because you were in the corporate bank trust department and then you were a property owner and a landlord. Was it hard to learn how?
It wasn't hard to learn about being a landlord. It was harder dealing with my own biases of thinking it needed to be different. And I had to learn I didn't have to be different to manage them. Right. The same way I managed my staff and encouraged growth and development in all the years I was in leadership, I treat my tenants all exactly the same exact way. Right. I talk with them about growth and the opportunities of them. I want to know, do they want to stay in an apartment forever, or are they looking to move into a house? And if they are, maybe there's something I can do to figure out how to make that happen in the future if they're great tenants.
I know you have relocated many of your tenants to the next step, whatever.
To the next step, bigger apartments into a trailer home, out of one or two bedroom into a 3-bedroom trailer home, or into a larger apartment, or from one building to another because they needed to be closer to work. They all know I'm open to having those conversations.
That is great. And when I talked about I don't know if I said this one yet, but the average subsidized tenant, this blows my mind, this stat too. They stay 7 years. Think about that. Who wouldn't want a tenant who's going to stay 7 years? And when I had my 100 units, I relocated them all the time. Like you said, they might have another baby. We need a bigger place, like that. You just move them to your other properties because they were great tenants.
Yeah. I mean, and some people might look at it as, oh, 7 years with a tenant that's just driving me nuts, that's tearing up my place. You can get rid of that tenant the same exact way. Just because they're in a subsidy program, you can still evict them the same exact way. You just need to communicate with the subsidy program and let them know what's happening and let them try to help fix the issue, right? But you still can get rid of a tenant regardless whether they're subsidy program or they are not subsidy program. The process for getting them out sometimes can be easier when they're with the subsidy program, because the subsidy program will, if they want to keep their program, they're going to say, I'll voluntarily leave. I don't want to lose my voucher. I'll move somewhere else.
Yeah. That's again, that cooperation between the worker or whoever. It's a third party to aid in if somebody needs help.
It's really how are you handling that situation is more important than what's happening with that person and the decisions they've made, in those, because how you handle it is going to really determine a lot of the outcome.
It is. And I know I had families who they did have trouble, somebody lost a job or whatever like that. And so they were perfect for a long, long time. And then they had a little dip, something happened. And what I loved is because I managed so many, I had figured out what agencies to send them to fill the gap, get that money before I had to evict them from another agency, because they just needed something to get through the bump. And then they had a new job, you know what I mean? And then they were fine again. But somebody had to cover that gap. They couldn't fill it themselves. And I loved that through knowing all these agencies, I knew where to send them to get some help.
Yep. And it does take a village. I mean, in every single town that I own, I know the local police, I know City Hall, I know the subsidy program people. The police will call me if there's a problem at any of my properties. They'll say, Russ, we noticed this was going on. We didn't have to stop by there last night. We wanted to let you know there's no danger, but there was an incident, right? And the fact that they know that I'm working with these tenants, and there's an appreciation that's there, because some of the tenants are very well known in those areas for some of the challenges they've had over the years. But the fact that they say, wow, this tenant has been living in this apartment for a year now, and we've had no incidences, that's a plus for them. That they say, something's really working, right? And then if something goes south, they know that they can call me and say, this is what's going on. How can we help? Or this is what we'd like for you to do.
I love that too, because you're right. We had relationships with the police, and in Hennepin County, they had something, I don't know if it's still available. It was called Walk and Talk. And you could get the police officer to go with you over to the apartment, knock on the door, and they would say, hey, we know there's drug dealing going on in here. I mean, imagine that you're home and the cops knock on the door and say that, and they just say, take care of it, get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, there were you, the landlord, standing there, and the cop. It's like the people, okay, you're busted now, folks. We're giving you the chance to clean it up and be done with it. And that really made a difference, and it kept the buildings, safe for everybody.
Yeah. Hey, LeAnn, I see someone that posted a question about, do I ever have any issues with people trashing the property?
Oh yeah, talk about that.
Right. Well, yeah, I've had the issue, but I learned something. Last year, I went to Bigger Pockets, and I sat in this training for Section 8 from this gentleman. I cannot remember his name. He's in Washington, D.C., and he talked about how he handles troubled tenants. And I have found this to be very successful, right? And he says that the way he handles it is if he sees a tenant, he can have a tenant that started off doing well, all of a sudden started going down. All of a sudden you're going in there and you're starting to see the carpet's getting dirty, they're leaving dishes in the sink all the time, it's starting to smell a little bit in there. He says, rather than him going in and yelling at the tenant, he says, okay, he schedules a meeting with the tenant and he talks with them about, okay, this is what I'm seeing. And this is what I see that's happening. And what I would like for you to do is let's come up with a plan and a strategy that's going to help you be successful in living here in the same way everyone else is. And he says he'll create like a 5 or a 10-point checklist. And he says, okay, these are the items that you and I agree, really, we need to work on. You notice I'm using words like we need to work on this, right? And then in working on this, what I'd like for you to do is I'm going to come back at the end of the month. And if you've taken care of adjusting all of these things, I'll take $50 off of your rent. And he comes back the second time. And sometimes they haven't gotten all of those things done. They may have only gotten 8 of the 10 things done. He says, okay, looks like we were successful this month, but I really would like for you, and I think you'll be happy for us to get to complete these 10. And then he says, maybe it'll take another month. He said, I'll come back again in another month. And if you've gotten all 10 things, and he walks in there, he's checking everything on the list while they're standing there. They're waiting to hand him the paper to say, look, I've got all 10 things done. Now that first month that they got 8 things done, they might have, maybe then he wouldn't give them the full $50 off. He said, okay, you did a lot. I'll take $25 off your rent this month. The next month, they want to complete the whole entire thing, right? And then what I'm telling you this because what he does with them is he helps them to create new habits. Because sometimes those habits that they've adapted are just life experiences that they're going through whatever they're doing and they're thinking it's right and they just don't understand it. So then you're explaining this is what needs to work. Now you may have tenants that you just say, you know what, they're not working out, but at least you've made the effort to try to figure it out. And $25 or $50 off the rent to get a tenant to turn around, if you got to put that apartment back on the market, you're looking at a 2-month turnaround. It's going to be a whole lot more than $25 or $50.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
I love that. Is there a flood of tenants applying? Like when you do have an opening, is there like a flood because there's waiting lists at these subsidy programs?
Yep. I have no problem filling any of my vacancies within 2 weeks because I get called by people all the time. I even get called by the subsidy programs. They'll send me an email saying, I have this person that's looking for an apartment in Dodge County or in Hennepin County or wherever it's at. And then they'll say, I'd like do you have anything available? But they're sending it to me and to about 5 or 6 other investors in the area. Right. And then whichever one of us that have it, we'll just go ahead and reply. And then we'll schedule a time for them to come and look at the apartment. But I get called from people all the time because it's traveling through word of mouth that Russ is what I consider to be a second chance landlord that really offers hope, not discouragement about living in a place that you deserve. And so what I do is I came up with a system where when someone calls me, I go through the same checklist of questions. And then I tell them after I've spoken to them, I say, please send me a text message. I don't have anything available right now, but I could have something within the next 30 days. You may still be looking. Please send me a text message with your name, the location you're looking to move into, the town you're looking to move into, or wherever it's at, that you're looking for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, that your moving date is so-and-so date, and put in the words potential tenant. And they say, why should I put that in? Because then I know that you and I have already talked, and I've already accepted that you would be a qualified tenant based on all the income questions and everything that I asked you. And then when I need to look for, when I have a unit open, I can go and look through the list of text messages I got. I search for the words potential tenant, and I'll see everybody who's called me in that month. And then I start calling them. Are you still looking for an apartment? And most of the time they are. Right. And they're actually surprised that I actually called them back, because most landlords either don't answer the phone or don't bother to call them back.
Wow. I love that. And plus you made your job easier when you said potential tenants, put that in the search bar, boom, there they are, boom, boom,
Yep,
boom.
and it shows all of them that are there.
You know, and I love that, because if you give them an assignment and they're really serious, they're going to send you that text.
Yep. And I think it's rare. I mean, I probably in the past 3 years have gotten, I don't know, 300 texts or something like that. And I'd say of that, maybe 10% didn't send it back to me.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah, if it's even 10%.
Did you ever experience any difficulty working with some of these agencies?
No, I think the complexity is just understanding how the agency operates and what they expect. Right.
Yeah.
And what are their expectations? Because each one of them is going to be different. Right. You might work with an agency that supports people that have gone through some type of abuse, or they're living in a shelter somewhere and they've been there for a period of time and they finally have finished going, even if it's drug use, they've gone through a year of rehab. The thing about it is that I've worked so closely with the subsidy programs that they will be hesitant to send me someone that they think is not going to be successful in the program. They're not looking to just dump people on me, because they look at it as, Russ is really trying to make this work with us. We don't want to screw this up with him. Right? So
that's a good thing.
Yeah. So they'll call me and say, I have this person, but they could be ready in another 2 months. They're just about done with the program. If they're successful and continue to be successful for the next 2 or 3 or 4 months, I'll be calling you back. They just call and give me a warning and an alert to know that this person could be coming and they're doing really well. And that's all a part of that communication and building relationships and me understanding what their expectations are and their understanding what my expectations are. Because I tell the subsidy programs all the time, every time I put one person into one of my buildings, there's an impact on all the other people that are there. And if that person is not going to contribute correctly, it's all those people that are working to do better are going to be impacted by that. So make sure you give me someone that's going to help the other 2 people that came out of the different groups help be successful. I had it happen one time where I had a tenant that moved in that was doing really well. And then she made the mistake and she offered drugs to one of my tenants who had been in recovery for over a year and had been clean. Well, that tenant, because of the relationship I built with it, called me directly and says, Russ, this is what just happened. And I said, okay. So I immediately called her counselor and said, this is what the situation is. They called her. The tenant called me back and said, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to help her. She said she had some situation, but it could have been handled in a different way. And I never had any more issues with that ever again with those 2 tenants.
Yeah. And it could have blown up.
Yeah, it could have blown up. If I'd have taken one of those attitudes like, okay, I want her out. She's a victim. She's done. That's no different than what some landlords that are out there today would have handled it. The tenant appreciates it, and the subsidy program really appreciates it, because now you're allowing them to do their job rather than they have to deal with an issue of trying to get you calmed down, trying to keep the tenant in the building because they think you're going to put them out and then they got to find somewhere else for them to go. Right. And then you're stuck with now 2 months of trying to find somebody to put in there, and you've already lost 2 months income.
Well, and you know, that just that level of communication, the whole building knows you don't pull anything over Russ's eyes, because you know, people take pride in living in the building. It makes a difference.
Yeah, and my tenants call me if there's something strange happening. Russ, I heard this out in the hallway yesterday. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Sometimes it's some small stuff that I'm like, okay, it'll be just fine. Don't worry about it. someone will stop over there, or I'll call the police and find out if there was something that was going on. They call me for stuff that's in the building next to them, just to let me know it's happening in the area.
What about this? What are your thoughts for those landlords who hesitate? There's a stigma out there. Oh, you don't want to, do Section 8. It's hard, or that, I don't know what this, what are your thoughts for them?
It's as hard as you make it, right? These folks that are coming through these subsidy programs, yeah, there are some that are just die hard, going to create issues, but if you put them through the same interview process you would put through a normal person, you're going to have confidence in who you select. You don't have to take someone out of a subsidy program, right? But if you feel comfortable that you've picked the right person that has $100,000 income job, then why would you feel uncomfortable if you've putting the other person through the same interview process?
Yeah.
Right. And you've picked them because they met the criteria. The only criteria that's really different is their income. That's it. They're still people.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And the income now becomes guaranteed for you. So it actually is easier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What's your special ability, Russ, around real estate investing that brought you, you have really a lot of success, 35 units in a couple of years. What's your secret?
I found the right coach. Right. I mean, when I sat on the couch for a long time, LeAnn, you and I know the story. I sat on the couch, I watched every video I could watch. I had bigger pockets coming into my ear and out of my ear and blowing up my head. And I would look at tons and tons of videos, read tons and tons of books. I sat in my car listening to videos, and every realtor I talked to just kept telling me the same thing. You need to save up $50,000 so you can buy your first property. I'd get to 20, I'd get to 25. Family emergency would happen, and I go spend the money for something else. Or we want to travel and go somewhere, spend the money. I never got to 50. In 10 years, it was going up and down. And then when I connected with you, we talked about something different, and you taught me about leverage, and a light bulb went off. But I already have everything that I need. And then after that, I decided just go ahead and buy your first property. And my first property was a condo. I remember the conversations because I wanted to buy, you follow the bigger pockets model. You want multifamily. That's where all the money is at. Right. But you taught me to take a different path. And that was a path that was going to be educational before it became profitable. Right. And by taking the educational, those several months that I spent in rehabbing that condo, right, I learned so much about not only rehab and how to work with HOAs, and I learned a lot about myself. And as I would work through all those different things, it created a level of confidence for me that the next property, our next property was what? I went from the condo to doing my first flip, right?
Oh yeah, the first flip, the big
first flip, right? And then a big flip with that, and then took that and then went and bought 2 multifamily buildings all at one time.
Boom.
Right? So, it's really about where your mind is at and what you're open to, right? And fear is going to be there no matter what. Right? I mean, I'm more afraid right now of what I'm capable of saying yes to than I am of anything else.
That is great. And I remember right at the beginning, like you said, you wanted the multifamily. I don't remember, it was a freezing day and I took you to a triplex. Remember that?
Yep.
And it was awful.
It was awful.
I knew it was awful before we went there, but I knew I had to take him over there so he could learn.
Yeah. And literally you could put a ball in the kitchen and it would end up in the bedroom. Right? Because the place was slanted,
leaning.
and it had tenants in there that were tearing the place up. And there's things that I've learned now, being years away from it, is I would not have known how to transition those tenants to stay or to go if that would have been my first purchase.
Yeah. You know,
I wasn't experienced enough yet.
There's a question. What happens if someone who's not on the lease moves in, like a boyfriend or a girlfriend?
I tell those people that they have to add that person to the list, but they have to go through the same background check and security check, right? Now, if their subsidy program has guidelines, I'm not the police of the subsidy program. They know that, they're aware of it. If they ever mention it to me, I can say, yeah, there is somebody else who lives there, but I don't call the subsidy program and say, oh, so-and-so has a boyfriend living there now. Now, if the boyfriend is creating issues, I'm going to probably say something, but he needs to be added as a tenant to that lease, or create some type of a sublease document that says this person is living there now at this point.
Yes, because you as a
Right.
landlord could have liabilities if they're not on the lease.
Correct. And I don't know what that person's background. I don't know anything about them. So they have to go through that process. And if they're not willing to go through that process, then the tenant has to leave. The person has to leave.
Yeah.
Right. And if the tenant continues to violate it, then I'm going to call the subsidy program. But I'm going to try to work with them first.
I'm really clear that, you know, it's simple when you have these certain guidelines, because then it's always just the same. Here's the guidelines. Here's what we have to do. You know, that's the rules of living in Russ's properties.
Yep.
And they're really those rules follow the fair housing rules and landlord tenant responsibilities.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They know I'm not afraid to evict them.
No, you're not.
They know for sure. I am not afraid to evict them. They're not going to have me ever come banging on the door, yelling and screaming. They know that I'm a business person that grew up in the streets of Brooklyn, and I'm going to handle the situation where it needs to be handled. I'm going to treat them well, but if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'm going to show them to the curb. Often I've had them where in all these years, I've only had to evict one person.
Yeah.
The others left on their own.
Yeah, they knew they were breaking the rules, so they thought,
They were breaking
we
the
better
rules.
get out of here.
And I send them their 15-day notice, and they know I mean business. You know, and sometimes what's really interesting is I've had some of them feel bad that they failed.
Mm.
Right. And I said to myself, Russ, are they feeling bad because they failed you? And in some form or fashion, I think some of it is that. Right. Where they're feeling, you know, he was trying to help me and I still screwed up. Like I've had their subsidy program managers have a couple of them say to me, and this person really feels bad that they didn't last there. They're hoping that someday they can come back. You know, and I'm like, well, let's see in the future. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know, they had to move on and go somewhere else to live. Or they want to use me as a reference in their next place. Right. And I said, well, it all depends, you know, on how the situation was. I'm not going to lie to another landlord that this person walked on water when I know that they didn't.
Yeah.
But if they worked with me and left on their own peacefully, and I understood why they had to end up leaving, you know, I'll at least work with the subsidy program to find an amicable place that they can move to because it didn't work out with me. And I'll be straightforward with the other landlord, but I also will tell them the good things about the person, not just that there was this issue.
Yeah.
And it existed.
Okay, if anybody else has any more questions, put them in there. I got a couple more here. You know, how do you stay on top of your game? Because you're busy. You're rehabbing at the same time that maybe somebody's moving. You know, you've got like a lot of balls in the air. How do you
Yeah.
stay on top of this, in your mindset even to, and then sure enough, some problem happens at some building and you got to go handle it.
Well, I strongly believe a part of it is how I work with my tenants, that they don't call to have me come repair every single thing. Sometimes they'll call me and they'll say, Russ, there's a problem with the sink is leaking. I can fix the sink. And if I've gone over and I've worked with them and I've talked with them and they'll tell me that they do these things for a living. And if like a P-trap needs to be replaced, they'll tell me, if you just drop off the P-trap, I'll replace it. Right? Or I've ordered stuff through Amazon and had it sent there.
Oh,
Right. Right. And then they'll take it and then they'll go and they'll fix it. Right. And then sometimes I'll say to them, yeah, sometimes I'll say to them, okay, fine. If you go and fix that, I'll take $25 off your rent. It's going to take them 10 minutes to do it. But they're appreciative of the fact that, and I would have spent more than that to driving gas back and forth in my truck. Right. So, but it's the fact that building those relationships, you get that kind of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't call you in a panic.
They don't call me in a panic. Yeah.
Even if the sink is leaking, they already got the bucket under it. And they call you more of a, hey, next time you're around.
Next time you're around, can you take a look at this? And sometimes I'll say to them, I'm in the middle of a big rehab that I'm pushing. I'm in right now. And I'll say, it's going to be at least another week before I can make it over there. That's fine. I just wanted you to know that this is something that's there. Now, if a tenant calls me and it's an emergency, right? Something's really bad that's happening that I need to run over there and fix, right? If a tenant calls me and says, Russ, I put a plug in the electrical outlet and sparks are coming out. I'm going to drop whatever I got to go over there and take a look at it and call an electrician, right? But if they call me and say the sink is dripping, I say, well, is it damaging? I ask the questions. Is it damaging the cabinets? Well, it's a little bit wet down there. Can you put a bucket up under there and empty it out every time? Is it a fast drip? Can you videotape it for me? They'll videotape it so I can see it, right? But it's all a part of that communication circle that's there. And then I can look at it and I can deal with it, right? I went yesterday and I was out there at one of my properties and the tenant caught me inside the garage and he was like, Russ, they got some problems inside the house. I've been wanting to call you, but I figured I didn't want to bother you. I know you're busy. Everybody loves to have a tenant that would think that they're going to be bothering you because you're so busy. And then he says, can you come inside and look at the light? The light wasn't working. There was a couple of other things that was there that they needed for me to address. I said, fine, I'll tell you what, I'll be back here, back in this area, the middle of next week. And then I'll bring and I'll replace all of these things. And he says, that's just fine. That's just fine. If we can get it done by the end of next week, I'd appreciate it. But it's the communication back and forth that I have. And I have some tenants that don't speak English very well. But I communicate just fine with Google Translate. Right?
Yeah. That's perfect. Okay, so any last valuable tip you would leave us with?
Regardless of where, it's easy for me to say it's all money, right? Because at the end of the day, it is all money. It's all people are going to pay you rent to live wherever you are renting, right? But you got to remember that these are people. These are not dollars, right? And the same way I learned as a corporate leader in all those years is that if I invest in my staff, in the people that report to me, my coming up always came because I invested in making them top performers, right? And I didn't have to stand on top of a building and brag about how good I was as a leader. As a property owner, I tell my tenants, don't call me landlord because I'm not a landlord. Right? And they said, yeah, you're not like any landlord I've ever had before, right? And because I treat them that way and because my actions represent that way, I get a different type of people, even if they don't they didn't know what to expect. They kind of knew it based on the kind of questions I would ask. I learned that in corporate. I would ask questions to people that they would be like, I never got asked that during an interview. Right? No, it's like no one ever cared enough to ask that question. Right? But when I'm interviewing my tenants, I do the same exact thing. I ask questions that might be a little bit different. I want to know, how important is it if your kid to go to a great school? Right? What is it about that I can do as the owner of the property to help your kid do better in school? Is there, if a tenant said to me, it would be great, my kid's always looking at reading, can you put a box out in front of the building where people can put in books? I had one tenant ask that. I said, sure, this summer we'll do that. I have to drive all the way to the other town to go get the books for my kid to read. It would be great if we had something like that here in this area. I was like, well, that's simple. Let's just put a box out, like a mailbox or whatever, and build it, and people can do it. Book exchange. Yeah. Small things like that, it gives off a great reward for the people that are inviting, that you're renting to. I did just one more thing that I did for my tenants this year that I learned from the guy that's in DC. When he said it, the room was like, you do what? So he owns timeshares. Him and his wife owns timeshares. And his top tenants, every year, he sends them on a vacation in which their lounging is covered. They have to pay to get there. They have to pay for all their amenities while they're there and the things that they want to do. But he says, these people are living in one of your homes, but most of them can't afford to go on like a real vacation somewhere. And some places that you would go to that would be like, oh yeah, I go there just normally, would be a dream place for them. So he says, and because I am this way with my tenants, who are they going to find to replace me? He says he has tenants that are with him 15 years.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right. And so this year I tried it because my wife and I own timeshares. So I picked the top 4 tenants, right? And I said, these are the places you can get to go to. I went to the primary top person and I said, these are all the 4 places you get to pick from. Which one do you want? I know if it was me, which one I would have picked, and sure enough, that's the one that they picked. I got a tenant who's never been out of the country, who's going to Aruba for a week, for 5 days. Wow. The other one is going to Myrtle Beach. I got one that's going to Florida, and I got one that's going to Michigan to the UP. Now, the benefit of the ones, I'm going to say Michigan, the UP, the benefit of that one is that I'm going to be at that one with my friends, and we're taking our boats up, and they don't know I'm going to take them and their kids out on the water while they're there. Right? And we're going to have a good time together, right? But these are people that they jump to fix things. They're very handy. They communicate well with me. Some of them pay their rent a month in advance. They're never late, right? And it's a mixture of Section 8 and traditional tenants.
You really have a heart. That's part of your positive share. Yep. With these people. I bet they're blown away. And those are, I once owned a building in Columbia Heights for 15 years, and Ray was my tenant. And Ray thought he owned the building, and I was fine with that. Ray, he was my man. He took care of everything. I never, ever had to do anything. Mm-hmm. And that's okay with me. He was there the whole time. Yep. And yeah, mm-hmm. And yep. I was fine with that. It's yours, yep. Ray. I remember when I went over there one time, I was like in shock. I hadn't been there in 3 or 4 years because I never had to go there because Ray had it covered. Yeah. Yep. And the trees were giant. And I was like, wow, what happened? That's how long it was since I was there. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't stop me from the vacations that me and my wife and my family take. I have them anyway available. Yeah. I make sure that I pick it during times that I'm maximizing on the utilization of my points.
but I know that they're all places that these people would love to go to. I mean, one of them, the one that's going to Myrtle Beach, has never seen a beach.
Ever. Wow.
Never, ever.
This is going to be exciting. That's really cool. That's a really
and that does
cool
me well
story.
to know that they're going to be able to go and do that. Right. And when they
That
come
is-
back, they're going to be even more excited to and I told them, I don't know if I'm going to do this every year, but I'm going to do it this year, and I'm going to see how it works. And then I'm going to see next year, and then I'll pick the top few that are doing. And if you're the top few again, then I'll do it. Then you'll be the one that gets picked. And I may decide next year not to do it.
They'll be out there painting his buildings when. Well, Russ, this has been such a pleasure. And, you know, it really, I think it lends a new light on Section 8 rentals or subsidized rentals. You know, I've always been a proponent. It was really the way to go. And I think you've really helped people to understand. And I really wanted to get that message out about landlords, that this is a win. This is a win for landlords.
It's a big win. Yep.
Yep. If anyone wants to get in contact with Russ, here's his information. Russell Mosley. And there's his phone number. If you have some Section 8 questions, or if you just want to meet a great guy and talk landlord. And the other thing I want to say is you can have a free strategy session with me if you're interested in coaching about real estate investing. And here's how you reach me. Just go to LeAnnRiley.com, and right there on my website, you can schedule a time that works to chat about it. And the last thing is I have a Facebook community called Real Estate Investing Made Simple. And right here is the link. Just go look on Facebook and join that community. I post a lot of information and education about how to build a portfolio. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for
And
having
I
me.
know we'll hear from you again sometime. So
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you.
More to
All
come.
All right. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you.